name is Kim Mudd. I am the nurse manager of the food allergy research team here at Hopkins. We're going to talk about managing childhood food allergies, specifically anticipatory guidance for adolescents. So some food allergy basics. Food allergy affects between 4 and 8% of adolescents. Food allergy is the #1 cause of anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis can be fatal if not treated, and the treatment of choice for anaphylaxis is epinephrine. 90% of food allergic reactions are caused by about 9 different foods, and avoidance is achieved by planning and label reading for those 9 foods. So what's special about adolescents and food allergy? In a word, risk. There's relative risks of adolescents for food allergy, one of which is age. The peak incidence of fatal anaphylaxis is related primarily to tree nuts in 15 to 20-year-olds. Males are at higher risk for a fatal anaphylactic event. African American race puts people at higher risk for anaphylaxis from all causes, not just foods. And adolescents have a higher rate of uncontrolled asthma, which puts them at a higher risk for a poor outcome related to anaphylaxis. So food allergic risk-taking behaviors, if you look at the auto injectors of epinephrine, so we said that epinephrine is a treatment of choice for food allergic reactions, but we have a lot of inconsistent self-carriage rates of epinephrine. Boys are a little less likely to carry epinephrine than girls. They hear things about the device is too big or my clothes are too tight, I'm not carrying a purse. Adolescents are more likely to carry epinephrine in supervised situations. So the highest carriage rates are when they're at school or camp or structured activities where there's likely to be another adult who actually knows their food allergy, like a school nurse or a camp nurse, and maybe even additional epinephrine auto injectors available. Where they don't carry their epinephrine is when the attending unstructured activities, such as like sporting events. In addition to not having epinephrine if there's a reaction, the strenuous activity of a sporting event can actually contribute to the severity of a reaction. So adolescents make this risk-related situational assessment about whether or not they're going to carry their epinephrine with them. They think about the familiarity of the place, the predictability of the situation, the distance from epinephrine, truly making a decision about, am I close enough to home that if I have a reaction, I'll just go home. They ask themselves about the likelihood of an adult being there and being in charge. Now, whether or not that adult knows their food allergy and knows what to do in a food allergic emergency or has an epinephrine autoinjector doesn't really fit into the conversation. And then the presence of allergens. Adolescents will think about whether or not they think that there's going to be a food there that's safe for them or not safe for them. And then they make a decision about whether or not they should have their epinephrine with them based on that. And we talked about the 9 foods being responsible for 90% of the food allergic reactions. There's actually a label. Every packaged food has a label, and on that label, it has to list if it has any of those allergens on it. The challenge is that manufacturers change processes all the time, and a food that was safe last week maybe isn't safe now. You have to read every label every time before you eat it. And teens are not good at that. So there's a lot of sporadic label reading. And there's this thing that adolescents will do, which is try a bite. So take a small bite of the food, kind of hold it in their mouth to see whether or not it makes their mouth itch or hurt, and then decide whether or not the food is safe based on that. They don't plan ahead because they're adolescents. So they find themselves in social situations where there's food and they don't know if the food's safe. It's not in the package. They haven't planned ahead to have a safe food there for them. So there's a lack of planning that puts them in a bad situation. One of the goals of adolescence is to develop self-care, but it's a process, right? And in general, adolescents are poorly equipped to treat a reaction. They're poorly equipped to recognize a reaction, but they're definitely poorly equipped to treat a reaction. We have some needle phobia, which actually is more likely to affect epinephrine usage rather than epinephrine carriage. But if you're having a reaction, even if you have an EpiPen with you, if you can't use it, it doesn't do you any good. Adolescents have a tendency to rely on their parents to manage their food allergy, and they deny their allergy or depend on it won't happen to me because of their embarrassment. So what are we going to do for adolescents? One of our best tools is omalizumab. Omalizumab was approved about a year ago. It blocks the action of IgE, which is the antibody that causes allergic reactions. It was approved to reduce food allergic reactions. The challenge with it is that of many, it's very expensive. It's hard to get insurance to cover it. In addition to it, there's a dosing table that depends on weight and total IgE. And especially for some of our bigger adolescent boys, the combination of their weight and IgE puts them in a point where they're not eligible to receive omalizumab because insurance won't pay for it. And then there's some variability in response to Xolair, which means everybody needs epinephrine. So as healthcare providers, we need to make sure that our patients have access to epinephrine. When you're prescribing epinephrine, you can consider delivery systems. Again, very insurance dependent. However, the epinephrine auto-injector that looks like a magic marker here, this is the one that people complain about because it's too big, it doesn't fit in a pocket, it has to be in a purse or a backpack. There is another auto-injector, this AviQ, which is about the size of a small cell phone and much easier to put into a pocket, and it actually talks you through administration. And then there's a nasal delivery system that was just recently approved to administer epinephrine nasally. We don't have a lot of data on the use in that in adolescents and food allergy, but it is available. We need to eliminate obstacles to self-care. The easy one is making sure that there's documentation in place so that adolescents can self-carry in social situations such as school. And the other piece of this is problem-solving scenarios with adolescents. I go through, nuts to bolts. Why, what can I do to help you problem solve when to carry your epi? Do you have it with you here in this situation? What's the barriers to carrying it here? How do we think through that? And then talk about when to use epinephrine. What constellation of symptoms is the adolescent thinking that they should have before they use their epinephrine? And ask and educate. Go through scenarios. If you have these symptoms, would you use your epinephrine? If you use your epinephrine here, would you call, when would you call 911? Help them problem solve. The other thing you can do is actually use an expired auto-injector, inject it into a piece of like an orange to see how much pressure it takes to activate the epinephrine auto-injector. And then identifying safe foods. This involves label reading. Adolescents are notoriously bad at this. I can guarantee you that their mother is very, very good at it. But everybody wants simplified allergen warnings labels. They have this thing called precautionary allergen labels. It makes everybody crazy. The bottom left, you can see where it lists wheat, soy, egg, milk, and then it says may contain traces of tree nuts. Well, what does that mean? The one in the middle says manufactured in a facility that also processes wheat. Not helpful. The one on the far right contains peanut, almond, soy, milk. Great. But there's a lot of ambiguous labeling, and it actually just turns teens off, and they think, why should I bother reading the labels? They're not helpful. And this concept of education is not just for the for the adolescents, but for their peer groups. If you have an opportunity to educate peers on the seriousness of food allergy, adolescents want their peers to know about their food allergy and know about epinephrine. Acceptance by peers can improve epinephrine carriage rates. And most adolescents, like 70% of adolescents, say that peer education would make it easier for them to avoid foods and eat safer. So the takeaway message here is that teens are at risk for poor outcomes related to food allergic reactions because of risk-taking behaviors and the fact that they're still developing self-care abilities. Teens need appropriate access to medications, including auto-injectors and omalizumab, and our teaching needs to be very focused to their needs. Thank you.